Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
Today we are going to find out all about the brand new Grand Archive Megastructure. We're going to find out about the Specimen system, one of the new Civics, and the new Archivism tradition tree. So if you'd like to find out about all of that and more, let's dive in. What is the Grand Archive? The Grand Archive is the cultural center for your empire. It is a place to house and display the story of your people through the greatest specimens of interest that you have collected over the years. This one-stage megastructure can be built over any colony with 25 or more pops, and it will not block other improvements such as orbital rings. The developers expect that most empires will want to build them over their capital world to keep their treasures close. The Galactic Archivism technology required for building a Grand Archive can appear as a Tier 2 society tech, and as such, building a Grand Archive does not require high-tier technologies such as mega engineering. On top of that, shortly after you discover your first specimen worthy of display, you have the chance to invest in the concept of a Grand Archive. If you pass on the opportunity at that point, it can show up later as normal in your society research options. Looking at the screenshots here, it's going to cost us 1,000 energy, but we will get 50% of the technology researched. Noting that it is a tier 2 technology going to cost at least 4,000 if we're on 1x tech costs, that means we're converting 1,000 energy into about 2,000 society research. That sounds like a very, very good deal to me. We're not yet sure what the special project does, but we can see on the right hand side that the Grand Archive does have an energy upkeep of 10 energy credits. I suspect we'll more than make our money back on that one with all the benefits we'll get from displaying these specimens, and it has a cost of 1,000 alloys. Early on in the game that could be quite expensive, but after the first 30-40 years or so, that's basically nothing. I think, having seen previous screenshots, and we'll look at some more shots a little bit later of specimens, I think this is going to be quite a powerful structure to build relatively early on, probably after you've got your first few colonies, but before you build your first fleet. Grand Archives can be built by any empire, and that does include genocidal empires like Fanatic Purifiers. Even if they have a more proactive stand on turning their neighbours into historical interests earlier than one would otherwise expect. We can see here from this screenshot that is roughly what the Grand Archive is going to look like. I think this is very zoomed in. I think from a zoomed out distance it will look a little nicer, though overall I'm not wowed by how it looks right now, I've got to say. It looks like a bit of a glass dome with a space thing in the middle, but again, I suppose, what do I expect it to look like? It's just a little space station we're going to get. I am interested in seeing if each different type of ship set will have a different skin for their Grand Archive. That would be pretty cool. The caption does say the color scheme matches your Empire flag and chosen ship set, so I'm pretty sure that overall there will be different looking Grand Archives, but maybe it just means that the color changes depending on your ship set. I'm sure the devs by now have probably responded to a comment like that on the forum, but for now I just will have to speculate. An archive with nothing to display within it is simply a building, and an expensive one at that. Luckily, fascinating moments worth remembering occur all the time in Stellaris. So the Grand Archive Story Pack has added 151 unique specimens to events, archaeology sites, and other content from across the base game, and the new content added in the Story Pack. The team has gone through all of the other Stellaris content as well, giving us a final total of 240 specimens to collect, study, and appreciate. Ancient Relics, Distant Stars, and Astral Planes, as the most exploration-focused releases, have benefited the most from this pass. As you can see in the screenshots right now, some of the events that you know and love, like Edict Monolithic, the Solar Sailor event, I get that one all the time, they're now going to be giving us specimens, probably on top of some other bonuses we'll already get, like a little bit of research and stuff. The specimen collection system does require the Grand Archive Story Pack, so if you don't have the Story Pack, you won't get any of these new specimens. A symbol is shown, as you can see, when you've acquired a specimen of interest. Occasionally, these are tied to a specific choice in an event, while other times they may be linked to your origin or actions that you have taken. Newly acquired specimens appear in a toast to give you a quick look at what you found. You can, of course, always jump over to your Grand Archive and look what's in there as well though. But where are they placing the new Grand Archive tab, I hear you ask? Well, the Space British Museum will now be in the Discoveries tab, and it will allow you to explore your collection and choose which specimens to have on display. Displaying specimens has an initial cost, which will increase with the number of specimens of that category that you have on display. There's lots of different categories, as you can see here, from aesthetic wonders to galactic history and xenogeology. And basically what's going to happen here is every time you put another specimen in each of these categories, as we mentioned, it will cost more and more and more. There will also be ongoing upkeep for each of your specimens, which will be affected by empire size. So taller empires will have cheaper specimen displays. Each specimen has its own effects. While on display, some produce a small amount of resources, while others might grant anything from energy from jobs to cloned fauna growth speed. Each specimen also has expanded lore and keeps track of where and when you acquired it in the first place. I have to say, I really like the additional amount of lore content they're adding in here. This kind of feels like a system that will allow us to, in some ways, go through the anomalies and events that we fired off in the game and remember what has happened, what we've discovered. I think something Stellaris is definitely lacking is a system like EU4 has, where we can read through the events of the past. I suddenly forget what that is called, but there's a great system in EU4 where you can read through what has happened during the reign of each of your rulers, what they've done, which provinces have been added to the country, which wars have been fought. That kind of stuff I think would be awesome to include in Stellaris, and this kind of seems like a step in that direction whilst not directly adding that feature. So there's a toggle on the top right of the specimen window which lets you set whether or not you want to automatically put any new specimens you acquired directly on display. You can also set up how you want to handle your overflow if not everything can be on display at once. I think we have a limited number of specimen slots for each type of artifact, but of course we have 250 specimens out there to collect. And they're going to range, as we can see, from common through to rare, epic, all the way up to exceptional. Interesting color choices here. I'm getting some World of Warcraft vibes. I like it. When it comes to displaying specimens, you can have up to 9 of each of the 3 categories, those being aesthetic wonders, galactic history, and xenogeology. So you really can only display 27 of the possible 250 that are out there. For a long time, people have asked for the ability to steal relics through war. There is a way of stealing relics, actually. If you land on someone's capital planet, you have, I think it's a 10% chance of stealing a relic from their relic collection. And if you then return the planet to them and land again and again and again, you can repeatedly roll that 10% chance if you really want to. But this is now going to be quite different. You are going to be able to acquire specimens through military means from other players. How do you ask? Well, you can build your Grand Archive close to the protective heart of your capital. Why would you want to build it in the heart of your empire? Well, it'd be a terrible shame if something were to happen to it. When you destroy another empire's Grand Archive, you will be able to recover some of the valuable specimens that were inside. That makes the Grand Archive excellent for seeing how good we are at stealing things. However, don't worry too much. If someone destroys your Grand Archive, you won't lose everything. The remaining specimens that were not stolen, which will be the majority, I believe, will still be safe and awaiting the building of a brand new Grand Archive so they can be displayed again. Here we can see what happens if your Grand Archive is destroyed. We will not get any effects, I believe, from these exhibits. They're not being exhibited. We will still have them, and as soon as we build, as the tooltip says, a Grand Archive Megastructure with a construction ship, then we can display them once more. You can also trade specimens with other players, so if you work on your relations with the Empire that destroyed your Grand Archive, in theory you could trade them back, I suppose. And finally, you can also dig through your pile of minor artifacts, spending it looks like 300, to see if there's anything worthwhile in there that got missed when you first acquired them. You will search for a specimen worthy of display from among your inventory of minor artifacts. I don't know why you have to throw out a bunch of minor artifacts in order to look at them. I completely get this from a gameplay and mechanical perspective. We need to spend a resource, and minor artifacts are a resource. But from a thematic perspective, why would we destroy all of these minor artifacts while looking at them? They're not, quantum waveforms. They won't collapse on viewing. Artifact analysis can be performed up to 5 times and has an increased cost every time you use it. So it sounds like we can only get 5, possibly up to 5. Maybe we get multiple when we do this action, but we can only use it 5 times. Now it's time to look at one of the new traditions, the Archivism tradition and the Galactic Curator Civic. It's one of the new Civics we're getting as well. Once you've researched Galactic Archivism, the Archivism tradition becomes available. Empty shelves do not make for a wondrous attraction, but focusing on Archivism can help fill them up quite nicely. I must say I love the art here, and that's a spaceship, not a hand. They thought we wouldn't notice, but I noticed. Let's break down what this new tradition does. It is entirely focused on specimens, pretty much, with a few tangential bonuses that it will provide. We will get the Astute Observation agenda, we'll look at that in a little bit when we unlock this tradition. Exhibit unlocking cost will be reduced by 50%, that I think is displaying an exhibit, but I might be wrong. Anomaly discovery chance will also go up by 5%, giving us a higher chance of getting anomalies and thus getting more specimens. On the left hand side, we're going to get Xenopaleontology. Unearthing secrets among the stars will allow us to learn from the mistakes of others. Archaeology excavation speed plus 30%, archaeology skill plus 1, and scientist experience gain plus 30%. I think the experience gain here is nice, the plus 1 archaeology skill is okay, but overall this is kind of meh. Frontier archaeology below that allows our science ships to excavate archaeological sites in unowned systems. That is amazing. I believe it's only systems that are owned by nobody. We still cannot excavate an archaeological site if we have cloaking, for example, in a system owned by another empire. I wish that this would let us do that, though. If this lets us complete archaeological dig sites in systems owned by other empires, that would be absolutely amazing, and definitely means in some of those pacifist playthroughs where some of my dig sites, my precursor quest lines, have been locked into other empires, I won't be entirely frozen out of them. We'll gain a random xenogeology specimen. Our science ship sublight speed goes up by 35% and the upkeep goes down by 50%. Those last two, honestly, I would probably just ignore. Jumping over to the right hand side of the tree, first we have expert negotiation. You'll get 1% additional diplomatic weight per specimen in exhibition, meaning at maximum we can get 27% additional diplo weight here by the mid to late game, I'm guessing. That's okay, not amazing. Your specimen selling cost goes up by 200% as well, so if you sell specimens, you'll get 3 times as much. Flawless display means that each rare or better specimen exhibited increases the total production of its category by plus 5%. I think that means the 3 categories, meaning Aesthetic Wonders, Galactic History, and Xenogeology. And if we've got 9 specimens, having 9 rare or better gives us a 45% boost to the total production in those categories, which could be nice. It really does depend on exactly what we're getting here. We also get 1 random Aesthetic Wonder specimen. The final bit of this tradition tree on the right bottom side is Exhibition Speculation. That means that we will unlock the Exhibition Focus policy, we'll look at that in a minute, and gain a random Galactic History specimen. Last but not least, the finisher effect for this tradition is that for each completed category in your collection, we'll get minus 15% relic activation cost, which I think gives us a total of minus 45% possible relic activation cost. We'll also get plus 15% specimens output and plus 1 ascension perks as normal. Overall, Archivism seems more thematic than anything, not particularly powerful. I'd probably rate it in the C tier, but that does depend exactly on how powerful each of these specimens end up being. So the exhibition specialization lets you focus your archive's output to one of the 3 specimens categories. It does reduce the other 2, and the agenda associated with archivism increases the chance of finding archaeology sites and increases your specimen output. So you'll get, if you focus for example on galactic history, plus 50% to your galactic history specimen output, but minus 25% to the other 2 categories. That could be very powerful if you've got lots and lots of specimens in one category, and even if you don't, plus 50% in one and minus 25% in the others might be worth it. I'm guessing this only modifies the resource output though, and it doesn't, for example, if we get a bonus to increase our production to specialist by 3% empire-wide, this won't give us an extra 1.5% to specialist output for a total of 4.5% because it's not a resource output. We will have to see though. Jumping over to the agenda, we'll get more specimens output and, I think more interestingly, an increase to your chance of finding an archaeology site. If you launch this, you'll get plus 100% chance of finding an archaeology site when you complete a survey. Of course, this is only going to be useful in the early and mid game, and given that in the early game there are lots of very powerful agendas vying for position to be used, I really am not sure this astute observation is going to be all that useful, unfortunately, or at least not from a power perspective. We don't really have any zany minor artifact builds in the game anymore, so yeah, I'm not seeing it being all that amazing. Because genocidal empires have absolutely no use for diplomatic weight, they are getting something slightly different in this tradition. They get Galactic Reaping, which gives them plus 5 monthly unity per specimen in exhibition. I think if we can get a lot of specimens early on, let's say we can find 5, 10 or 15, this could be a pretty powerful little extra bonus to get as a genocidal empire. An extra 50 or 100 unity early in the game could be quite good, especially if it's on top of the other bonuses we're already getting from these specimens. If you want the best possible Grand Archive, then you need to look no further than the Galactic Curator Civics. There is a different version of the Galactic Curator Civic available to every type of empire. These civilizations all begin with Galactic Archivism as a guaranteed research option. They'll also get 1 common specimen, which is the worst type, for each category, and a discount when dealing with the Curator Order. They gain 25% discount when actually building a Grand Archive, so that's 250 alloys off, and have an increased chance to discover anomalies. That's only an extra 10% though. They do tend to overwork their bureaucrats, which does reduce their effectiveness by a small amount, minus 10% unity from jobs. However, I should point out, unity from jobs has so many modifiers we can get in the game that minus 10% output there is probably pretty negligible, or at least pretty negligible after the early game. Nothing delights Galactic Curators more than finding a new specimen or completing an archaeology site, so whenever you get a new specimen or complete an archaeology site, you will get a unity bonus. I would like to point out here that I think the council position is pretty cool. Your culture workers will get an additional 0.5 unity per skill level of the counselor, and given we can get up to 15 or 15 to 20 skill level on our counselors, that could be as high as around 7 extra base unity production to our culture workers. Wow. And then for Megacorps, they're going to be getting the Curation Officer, granting +1 base trade value from culture workers in your empire. That's good. I don't think that's quite as good as the Unity bonus, but I think it is still good. Overall, this is clearly a flavorful Civic that's going to be giving us a fast track into the features of this DLC. Somewhat like the Storm Chaser's origin in the previous Galactic Storms DLC that we had, gives you a fast track into interacting with storms in the Storm DLC. I don't think that necessarily makes it super powerful, but it could be a lot of fun, I suppose. Especially if you're desperate to have like a Trazyn the Infinite kind of roleplay. I'm thinking you start off with Synthetic Fertility plus this Civic. Not sure on what you'd have as the second Civic, but yeah, you start there, or maybe you already start as machines an individualistic machine, but there could definitely be some options. I'll probably do a playthrough like that for myself more than anything else. Trazin Pokemon style funness. He'll be great. And if you're enjoying this video, please make that like button a fine addition to your collection. Once you get a big enough collection, you'll start getting some special interactions with the Curator Order. You can ask them for various things, be it specialized museum plans or help setting up a cultural enrichment program. Naturally, they will want to be compensated, you'll have to pay them some energy credits, but you can get things like the Hollow Museum of Wonders. This is going to be increasing your specimen output. Again, I'm not sure if that's just resource output or possibly something else. However, this is a little bit weird. Instead of a hollow theater, we're going to take amenities and convert them into Unity and Edict Fund. I have to say, I think whoever designed this hates museums or art galleries, because I would argue that a museum or an art gallery provides amenities, you know, rather than removing them from the society. But okay, interesting. I do like the concept. It seems like an interesting building. It does have an empire limit of 1. Again, it depends how powerful specimens are, and that power level will kind of dictate whether or not we really choose to build these buildings in our empire. If you get a high enough reputation with the curators, and I think also get enough specimens yourself, you will then be able to give a generous donation in exchange for the honor of selecting a relic to care for from their collection. For example, we could get the Pattern Maker or the Vaporous Mega Orchid. And let me just emphasize here, these are relics, not specimens. The developers have added 15 new relics that the curators will be able to sell to you, 5 associated with each of the 3 specimen categories. That's a lot of extra relics that we're now going to get in the game. I'm very, very excited to see what all of them do. And now we've got a little something from the Custodians. For those of you who don't remember, the Custodians initiative is basically the developers are tasked with going back and improving, working on changing parts of Stellaris that have already been released in the past. They're adding things into DLC, they're improving the base game, they're improving the game. They are responsible for the free updates, somewhat, that we get alongside the Crisis team that delivered the DLC. I don't want to add confusion here, but the two are the same people. They just split their time between different areas, or so I've been told. Now, pictures speak louder than words, so let me introduce you to the brand new game setup screen that will finally show you what each galaxy type actually looks like before you load into the game. This is an awesome, awesome change. I believe by doing this as well, it will allow the developers to add extra toggles into the advanced settings in the future, giving them more option to allow us to meddle with the game before it starts. If you've enjoyed this video on the latest Stellaris DLC, but you still haven't scratched that Stellaris itch, click the video on screen now.